the question for the legislature is, do you want housing to be more expensive or less expensive? The state of Minnesota has two opposite positions. We're willing to spend money. We're not willing to legalize housing. So does the state want housing to be more or less expensive? Right now, just spending money is like being in a boat that's sinking, and there's a giant hole in the bottom of the boat, and instead of fixing the hole in the bottom of the boat, you just keep bailing.
We're rolling. We're rolling.
This is a real thing. Real thing.
None of you have the balls to stop this. Stop this.
I've got plenty of time. I have nothing else going on today.
We're in the Wedge neighborhood right now.
Welcome back to the Wedge Live podcast. I'm your host, John Edwards. Another Senate District 60 candidate episode for you today. Peter Wagenius is running for the seat held by Carrie Ziedzik until she passed away December 27th. The DFL primary is January 14th, so just a couple of days from when you listen to this episode. Welcome, Peter.
Thanks for having me, John. Happy to be here. Can I call you John, or are we supposed to call you Wedge Live?
You can call me John. You've been on this podcast enough times to know you can call me John. Was it like four times at this to
Is it 4? I knew it was at least 3.
I think this might be the 4th.
I wrote your thing into my calendar, and it auto-populated to Edge Love rather than Wedge Live. Is that a problem other people have?
Edge Love is my location-based dating app that I'm starting. That's Edge Love.
Good. I'm glad you have a location-based dating app, and that's a good name.
So this has been quite a whirlwind. What is going well for you, Peter? I talked to Monica about all the money she's raising. I complimented Doran on his excellent website that he got up in a number of days. What's going well for you? What are you proud of in the very brief time that you've been running?
Sure. Well, I mean, launching a campaign in a very short period of time is something that, both having been a campaign manager and a candidate before, is not intimidating to me. And, raising $10,000, over $10,000 on New Year's Eve in last calendar year, and 26 or whatever we're up to now, having the resources to run the campaign is great. Just had a wonderful event, a Meet Peter event at Broken Clock. Nice turnout, good conversation. Digital, mail, the volunteers. There's also this phenomenon where I never watched, I'm not, as old as I look, I'm not old enough to have seen the show, This Is Your Life or It's Your Life or whatever, but that idea of people coming together from different parts of your life where they're like, and then they meet each other. So like, where do you know Peter from? Well, I know Peter from the Minneapolis Public Schools. Where do you know Peter from? Well, City Hall. Where do you know Peter from? Well, Climate Action. And where do you know Peter from? Somebody showed up who knew me from working in an educational theater for kids, using theater games and role play to teach conflict resolution to kids with behavioral problems. And it's like all these people coming together to help me out. That is a really cool feeling. I'm not saying, I'm not like recommending it to everybody like as a healthy thing, but to see all the aspects of your life if you're 54 and they all come together to help you out, it's a good feeling. It's very cool.
Do you have any friends outside of politics? Because sometimes I worry, like every time someone asks me, well, how do you know so-and-so? And I'll say, oh, local politics. Like it is the answer every time that question comes up. I don't know anyone that I don't know through local politics, if that makes sense.
Okay. I don't have an answer for that, but for you, but for me, I have friends from theater. I have friends from high school and college because I did both in state. Here's a funny thing. I don't think we talked about this before. If I'm walking down the street and somebody yells out "slam," I don't know why I'm admitting to this. I know where they know me from because that was my nickname in college.
Slam. Why was your nickname Slam?
So, because I was part of a group, a summer stock theater company with 12 people in it, and literally 3 of them were named Peter. And I was the most junior of the 3, and I was instructed, not asked, I was instructed, you will have a new name, because this is a pain in the ass, because the first show was directed by one Peter, starring 2 others. One of them wrote for the Colbert Report, by the way, won like a couple of Emmys. And so I was told I was going to have a new name, and they came up with Slam, which has nothing to do with basketball skill, obviously. It has nothing to do with rap battles, obviously, or poetry. It's just because my middle name is Duncan, and Slam Duncan.
Oh, okay. All right.
Stuck. So I know people from all kinds of aspects of my life that aren't political. And that's what I was trying to say, is the cool part of it is there are people stepping up who are like, Peter, this politics stuff is, how do you do this? They think it's bizarre. And I'm not going to tell them they're wrong. I'm just glad they're helping.
So what does Minneapolis need from the legislature right now when it's going to be so closely divided and people are skeptical that anything can get done? What does District 60 in Minneapolis need? Yeah.
Well, first of all, we have to take the short and the long-term view. The short-term view, sure. I mean, we don't have a Democratic trifecta. We're not going to have a 2023 session where an incredible majority leader, Kerry Dietzig, is going to shepherd through like a lifetime of legislation in 5 months. That's not going to happen. You need a DFL trifecta to do that, and you need leaders like Kerry Dietzig, and we don't have either of those things right now. But there's a technical term for this. It's called thermoelasticity. Politics is thermoelastic. It means the pendulum swings. And based on the parade of incompetence and corruption that we're going to see at the federal level, and I think people are going to react negatively to it, the pendulum is going to swing back in our direction. It's going to swing back in our direction 2 years from now. And it's our job to push the pendulum so it swings hard in the direction of progressive change. I know some people are bummed out about the election. Of course I am too, on a national scale. We were talking at my kickoff event on New Year's Eve about how people are experiencing the loss of Kerry. It's like layers of grief, because they were already experiencing grief about, I'm not sure where to look. I'm trying to look at you, John, and I don't know where my eyes are, but people are experiencing the level of grief. They're scared to be an American right now. And I'm not going to tell them they're wrong. Trump's going to hurt people, and we can't prevent it all. And we should try and prevent everything we can. But it wasn't the same in Minnesota as it was nationwide. And we got to remember to take pride in that. In the Minnesota legislature, after all that incredible ambition that we saw from our legislators and the pundits saying, oh, don't do that, don't be ambitious, we lost just one state house member. So let's program that knowledge that people do not punish ambition to help people into our future plans. Let's work towards getting a trifecta back, and let's do what we did 2 years before we had the last trifecta, which is let's take progressive legislation out for a spin in the Senate. We did that, in the House, in 2020, knowing full well all our legislation was going to get shot down. But it was beneficial to build support for that legislation so that when we did get a trifecta, we jumped on it. And the bills I worked on, the transportation bills. There were a bunch of things Kerry passed that I didn't have anything to do with. But we passed 3 breathtaking climate bills. It wasn't because we started in January. It started because we started years before. We passed 100% clean energy before Valentine's Day. That didn't happen because we started on January 1st. And that's how we should be thinking. In the short term, what can we do? And what the long term? Long term, we should push the pendulum back in our direction and plan for a huge session after the next election. But I don't give up on the idea that there are things we could do in the meantime. We've talked about land use reform, you and I. Land use reform has passed in other states on a bipartisan basis. Washington State, Montana's not some blue state. They decided, hey, maybe if we want more housing, we shouldn't make housing illegal. Maybe a prerequisite of getting more housing is to make housing legal. And I've been working for the past year or more as a part of a coalition, which it now has a name called Yes to Homes, with faith-based groups, labor unions. Sierra Club is there, and I'm there representing environmental groups to say, hey, let's be like those states that passed land use reforms. And there are some legislators I do not agree with on many other issues, or any, who are willing to work with us on that. You asked me a simple question, and I gave you a really long answer. We are also going to play defense, depending on what happens with the House and how much they abuse their temporary 2-week non-majority majority. And so there's a lot up in the air. But having a long-term plan and having short-term goals is how I'm going to approach this.
So thinking about, you've got a long resume, Peter. You've been involved in a lot of things. You got a lot of things done. Can you give me like a couple of the things you're most proud of where you showed leadership, you saw a problem and you stepped in and you accomplished something, just to give people a sense of what you've done?
Sure. So I'll just hit a couple of highlights. After I worked at that educational theater for kids for a couple of years, my next job was working for the state Senate. While I was there, I got a top staff award for basically for 2 things: for working on the Katie Poyer abduction task force to fix some of our criminal justice laws, some things that should have been in place to protect people like her. I also pushed back hard against the 24-hour waiting period. I've always been absolutely clear about my position on reproductive choice. And so those are 2 of the biggest things I did when I was a Senate staffer. I was assigned to housing, job creation, transportation, and so I learned a lot. Mostly that was a learning experience, but I did get a couple of achievements along the way that I'm really proud of, and those are 2 of them. Those are the ones that got me the top staff award from the St. Paul Legal Ledger, which doesn't exist anymore. When I came to the city of Minneapolis, we were in a budget mess. And some of that was inherited, and then Palenti decided to pile on a bunch of other, Palenti math, where they do this cute Republican math where they count inflation for money in, but not money out. And that was a years-long effort to right the ship so that we were making sure we were not spending our money paying off debts, but serving people. And providing them municipal services that they needed. And I really think the Minneapolis Public Works Department was unrecognizable by the end of that time, my time in City Hall from the beginning. I mean, when I started there, were they that different from MnDOT? Do you know what I mean? Like
right.
roads, traffic sewers, all that, old nonsense. We hired a lot of people, disproportionately women engineers, who were embracing a new wave of thinking. And I'm not saying that everything's perfect, but oh my God, what we inherited compared to what we left, I'm really proud of that. And of course, the transit projects, the transit and the bike projects. Dinkytown Greenway, my girls call that Daddy's Trail. When they were young, I think they thought I built it. I didn't build it. I just got the money for it, but that's my part of the world. Negotiating the Central Corridor Agreement to get through the University of Minnesota campus. The politics of the University of Minnesota, you got to deal with that if you're a state senator from this area. And Kerry did it really well. And part of what you recognize is the university isn't a thing. It is a set of constituencies. And we had the nurses on our side. The doctors were not on our side. We had students on our side. But it was a fight. It was a fight to get the Central Corridor LRT line through the University of Minnesota. And I'm really proud of how that worked out. So those are some of the things I did at City Hall, and I think I already mentioned, and I'm giving you too long an answer, but at Sierra Club, we put years into work for those 3 big climate bills. And also, the one I didn't mention is our environmental justice bill. And I don't want to claim that I was a leader on this, but I'm really proud that Sierra Club supported the Frontline Communities Protection Act. That's the bill that says before they're going to do some other polluting thing, they got to factor in, what have they already done to a community? What have they already done to North Minneapolis with American Iron and the garbage burner, et cetera, et cetera? Well, you can't just add one more thing and act like it's one thing. That's the Cumulative Impacts Bill, which is called the Frontline Communities Protection Act. I'm just really proud of the fact that when we got a trifecta, we used it. Broadly speaking, and also the pieces of it that I got to play a role in.
So let's talk about public safety. So the consent decree, the federal DOJ consent decree with the city of Minneapolis about MPD finally came down and was approved on Monday. I've been asking candidates, like, what does the city need in terms of public safety? So you can answer that one, but also, like, what about police reform in this era of divided DFL GOP state government? Like, is there anything to hope for in that regard?
Well, let me just preface this by saying I know what job I'm running for.
Right.
I have been recruited to run for city council in the past, and I never even thought about it because the only elected job I've ever wanted is the legislature, because that's where the big fight is over the future of our state. So I'm not running for city council. I think my best contribution to public safety in Minneapolis is going to be all the things we can do to ensure that people get their basic needs met. The lack of housing is a 50, 60-year problem dating before, which is all about whiteness. It's all about the fear of, if we allow rental property, who's going to live next door to me? Well, the street where I live has duplexes and fourplexes and triplexes, and it's a great street. And there are streets like that all across Minneapolis. And all the things we can do, I'm giving you just one example, but all the things we can do to have people get their basic needs met and to get people housed is going to make a huge difference on public safety in Minneapolis. But let me go a little bit more directly to your question. I think that another piece that I think directly will impact the city of Minneapolis is what can the state do? And I'm not saying that we're West Virginia, but we still, the school to prison pipeline is a real thing. And it's not just in states with for-profit prisons. The percentage of the prison population that has learning disabilities like dyslexia compared to the regular population is off the charts. And the legislature just passed a bill, another one of their amazing pieces of legislation from 2023. They passed the READ Act, which is going to gear us up to diagnose all the kids with learning disabilities by first grade, I think by the end of second grade. That's amazing. And I don't think, and my wife and I are really active in our kids' school, and I have some knowledge about how this works within the Minneapolis public schools, I'm really glad the READ Act passed, but we got to gear up to provide services to the kids who are diagnosed. Otherwise, we're not interrupting the school to prison pipeline. We're just going into it with more knowledge. That's not a critique of the bill, by the way. The bill is amazing. It needed to happen. I'm so glad it finally happened. But we need to gear up funding so that the kids who are identified get early interventions, because racial disparities in school, this has been studied at the University of Minnesota, start really, really, really young. And our interventions need to start really, really, really young. And that's what I want to be working on. That's what I think the role of a legislator is, to make sure that we're not just reacting to, crime, that we're getting way ahead of it in the ways that we know we can. Lead service lines in pipes, all the lead poisoning. That's another example. There are a huge number of environmental causes. And everything we can do to attack that seems like really long-term. The fact that it's long-term doesn't mean you wait. It means you start right away.
So a similar question. You're obviously, as you've said, you're not running to be the boss of first responders, but on homeless encampments in Minneapolis, like what, I'm going to turn it around on you and make you come up with the question. Like, what is the question we should be asking legislators and how they can help Minneapolis deal with that better? Is it just money?
Wow. No, it's not just money. It's not just money. And I'm kind of passionate about this, and I'm glad you asked the question the way you asked it, because I honestly want to ask at the legislature. I've even thought about what I would say if I had an opportunity, at the swearing in, because that's the kind of thing you motivate yourself with when you're tired. The question for the legislature is, do you want housing to be more expensive or less expensive? Because right now the state of Minnesota is sending very mixed messages. We are willing, let me back up a step. There are three things we absolutely have to have in order to have any kind of comprehensive housing strategy. We need renter protections. We need funding, serious funding on the lowest end, the most affordable end. because the public sector is never going to build that. And we need to increase the total supply of housing. Well, when you look at bucket 2 and bucket 3, or item 2 and item 3 of that list, the state of Minnesota has two opposite positions. On item 2, we're willing to spend money, but on item 3, we're not willing to legalize housing. So does the state want housing to be more or less expensive? Right now, just spending money is like being in a boat that's sinking, and there's a giant hole in the bottom of the boat, and instead of fixing the hole in the bottom of the boat, you just keep bailing. Well, that's crazy. If we want housing to be less expensive, we have to bail with money and fix the hole in the bottom of the boat, which is to legalize more housing. And that's why I'm so excited about this Yes to Homes coalition, legalizing more housing types and breaking out of this notion, this crazy notion that somehow we're going to fix a metropolitan-wide problem, a statewide problem, just with the city of Minneapolis and the city of St. Paul and maybe one or two first-ring suburbs. The state has to play a role. The state has to stop deferring to cities, even if everybody was operating in good faith. And I submit they're not, every city. Even just the idea that 97 cities in the transit service area, 180, whatever it is in the metro area, and all the cities statewide, the idea that we're going to get good, responsible land use policies by bringing a set of resolutions one by one to 97 cities or 180 cities one by one, that's nuts. It's a statewide problem and it requires a statewide solution. I'm not saying I have all the answers. I'm not saying that. I do have some ideas that we've been talking about this summer, but I'm going to go to Lindsay Port and I'm going to say I'm on your team. You've been waiting for reinforcements and I'm reinforcements. Put me to work. I've got some ideas. I want to hear your ideas. But the key thing is the state has to assert its role. This idea of the city's got it, bull. The cities don't got it. And as long as we act like the city's got it, we'll never have a solution.
So on education, everyone I talk to who's running for the legislature is going to say fully fund public schools. Tell me why you mean it and you're better and you will get it done.
Well, fully fund. We got to look at the funding streams. We also got to look at the politics behind the funding streams. Okay? So, the per pupil formula for school funding depends on, butts and seats. How many kids are in the Minneapolis public schools? And obviously, the more kids we can attend the Minneapolis public schools, the better. My two daughters are in the Minneapolis public schools. And by the way, we went around to all of our neighbors and said, hey, you know what? What happens is the public schools in Minneapolis lose kids oftentimes between elementary school and middle school or junior high. And we went around to all of them and said, let's all go together. We're all going. We're sticking with it, right? And my daughter's really excited to be attending Northeast Junior High Northeast Middle School next year. It was junior high when I was younger. So butts and seats is a legitimate thing we should all be working on as citizens, including state legislators. But what I talked about with the politics of this is, remember back when, I'm saying this to you, and this is where I'm showing my age again, but whatever.
I'm not going to remember what you're going to talk about, but
I'm 54.
Okay.
I'm 54. I'm just saying it. When Tim Pawlenty and the Republicans last had like real power, they went after integration aid, which is a component of school funding. Why did they go after integration aid? Is it because they were suddenly convinced that integration was no longer an issue? No, it's because they knew Minneapolis benefited from it. And can we not pretend that there was anything else involved? Can we not pretend that there's anything else involved? The Republican willingness to hate on cities is at the core of a huge part of their identity as a party. They hate cities because of our attitude of inclusiveness and the people who live in cities, who are people who don't vote for them. So we have to go in there with open eyes and recognize that if the House members if the Republicans are able to leverage this temporary 2-week, 1-vote, non-majority majority into electing a speaker for 2 years, they're going to establish the most extreme position for the purposes of negotiations at the end of session. Will they take an aim at integration aid again? Probably. I think it's called Achievement and Integration Aid now. And we just gotta. I'm a big believer in Annette Schenker-Osorio and her message advice, which includes name the game. This politeness thing. I understand when you're on the Senate floor, you cannot question other people's motivations. That's a good rule for a deliberative body. We don't want to be like an old school D.C. Paul who takes the rules of the Senate and then brings them out into the real world. In the real world, we got to say what's true. We got to, as Annette Schenker-Osorio talks about, we got to name the game. And the game is fomenting hatred of Minneapolis for political gain. Demonizing the kids in our schools. So, I mean, we all understand that, I guess the short answer to your question, and I gave you a long answer first, is we all want more funding for our schools. But we got to be willing to fight for them and name who is attacking our schools and what the motivation is behind that. And I'm certainly willing to do that, and I'm eager to do it. The whole reason I live in Minneapolis is because of Minneapolis Public Schools. Have I told you that story?
No, you haven't told me that story.
So, my brother and I were born overseas. I'll do the short version. My brother and I were born overseas on a Navy base, him in Morocco, me in Spain. We came back, and my family was living at 67th and Humboldt, outside the city in Brooklyn Center. And by the way, what I'm about to say is not a critique of Brooklyn Center today. But Brooklyn Center at the time, my parents were saving money by being caretakers of an apartment building, saving on their rent. And my brother was going to be brought into the local elementary school. And my mother, who was raised in the segregated South, she is highly attuned to racism in education and just generally. And she got home from that visit and said, "We are not sending Stuart, my older brother, to this school. We're moving to Minneapolis. 8% mortgage be damned. We're doing it now." And we moved to Hale and Field. If you don't know the story of Hale and Field, it's a remarkable story. It's the first two schools that were paired in Minneapolis for the purpose of racial integration at the insistence of the neighborhoods. It was not pushed on them. The neighborhood said, "We want to integrate our schools." And I got a great education in the Minneapolis Public Schools, starting in that elementary school. And when I look at the schools my kids are in now, Pratt, which includes Prospect Park and Glendale Townhomes, and some kids from Cedar Riverside who go to multiple schools, but including ours, it's everything. It's everything. It is a loving and diverse school. It's everything we want America to be in a school. And I want to tell that story. I want to tell the story of the street where I live with duplexes and triplexes and fourplexes, and aggressively defend Minneapolis and the people who live in it. And when somebody is coming after us, whether it's integration aid, achievement and integration aid, or something else, you got to name it. Even if you can't do it on the Senate floor in the way you want to, we got to communicate what's being done and why, because that's how we win, by exposing the motivation of the other side.
So moratorium on charters? Yes? No?
I think I'm open to that. There are kids getting good educations in charter schools, including a lot of kids in this district. I don't think we want to be shutting down charter schools.
But a moratorium on new ones?
A moratorium on new ones is something we need to look at, because I was talking to, I probably shouldn't name somebody because they're not taking a position in this race, but a former member of the school board. It's just the math doesn't work. You're cutting the pie into smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller pieces. That doesn't work. So we've got to staunch that. And if somebody has a better idea, I'm up for it. And we can't be cavalier about this, because I feel like sometimes people they come up with a grand new plan for schools, and then there's a grand new plan, and they forget about the cost of disruption from wherever you were to whatever you get to. The disruption itself is bad for schools, but we have to stop slicing the pie into smaller and smaller and smaller slices. It's not mathematically sustainable. I know about public sector budgeting from my time in City, Minneapolis. I'm not at the school board. There are things that I don't know. I'm going to be educated by other people. But the basics of public sector finance tells you that this isn't working.
Transportation. So
Yeah.
we're talking a lot about I-94, rethinking I-94, perhaps removing it and replacing it with a Twin Cities Boulevard. What do you think about that?
Yeah, okay. So coincidentally, I was at Broken Clock tonight at our, happy hour with Peter thing where people can just come and talk to me. And coincidentally, we talked about both 94 and about corridors through the district in general. And I won't name him because, because I don't have permission to name him. But it was somebody who lived really close to University Avenue. And he was talking about, I live next to a freeway called University Avenue. And when you get further up into northeast Minneapolis, that's what we're talking about. I mean, it's a MnDOT road. Both Central and University are MnDOT roads, 47 and 65. And one of them feels like a street, and one of them feels like a highway. For Southsiders, think about Minnehaha and Snelling next to one another. Minnehaha feels like a street, and Hiawatha feels like a highway. Well, we need to get things set up where the city and the county are in charge of the streets within the city. This 1960s, 70s, 80s thing where the city and the county give over their streets to the philosophy of, we're just a raceway for suburbanites to get out of town. We're just a pass-through, and you can turn our streets into traffic sewers. Not okay. Not okay, and they all need to be fixed. Not just 94, but streets in Senate District 60 need to be controlled by the city of Minneapolis and Hennepin County. Now, when I was at City Hall, and I'm a few years separated from this, Hennepin County was ready to let go of Central Avenue. They wanted to they said, this isn't a highway. And it's like, good, we agree, it's not a highway. So why is it yours? It becomes a financial thing. It becomes a financial thing. The county could get a turnback of the road, but it's hard for them to take a rapidly depreciating asset. That is a financial burden for them. So what we need to do is we need to set it up where the county has control over the new design. It is redesigned for that purpose while it's owned by MnDOT, and then they hand over the keys to the county or the city. I'm not dictating the outcome here. But when I was in City Hall, MnDOT was ready to give it up. They were ready to give it up. But it can't be handed to them as a asset about to fall apart. It has to be handed to them as an asset that's not going to be a drain on county resources. And I want to be a person who can facilitate that for streets in my district, what I hope to be my district, so that they can be safe and walkable and the kind of things that people would want to have housing next to. And I think my background lends itself really well to that work.
What about 94?
Yeah. Okay. So 94. Sorry, you said that, and I. So here's my history on 94. It was actually one of the first things I started working on when I came to Sierra Club, because MnDOT said that they were going to be rethinking 94. Well, okay, a rethink is really needed on 94, but let's remember the history here. The history of 94 is two crimes, racial injustices, two crimes. One of them is acknowledged and one of them is not acknowledged. The acknowledged crime, and when I say acknowledged, I mean the Dayton administration actually had an event where they said, we're sorry for what we did, which was the destruction of Rondo Avenue, the dispersal of a good number of residents, and the destruction of generational black wealth. Okay? That's the acknowledged crime. Funny enough, though, not funny, unfair, the second crime was not acknowledged, which is the ongoing disproportionate pollution of everybody left behind. Not everybody was removed by the 94 project destroying Rondo Avenue and those black homes and black businesses. The people who are still there disproportionately experience the pollution and everything that flows downstream of that. The asthma, the school absenteeism, the problems with school performance that stem from the health problems. MnDOT, as far as I know, has never acknowledged the second crime because the crime is ongoing. And they seriously proposed an expansion of the freeway. Now, what I did at Sierra Club is we got a unanimous resolution of the St. Paul City Council, a unanimous resolution of the Minneapolis City Council. This was like 5-6 years ago, saying you cannot expand the freeway. So then Sierra Club kind of backed up because our streets kind of came in to take the lead and put this really bold vision on the table for the Boulevard project. And I think we have leverage now. I think we have leverage now because Minot still put on the table their expansion plan in defiance of 100% of the local municipal officials from both cities, which I think is just appallingly tone deaf to like community input. So we don't have the votes yet to get what we want, like something brand new. They don't have the votes to get what they want either. The problem is that the status quo is bad. Right. The status quo is poisoning people. And so I want to keep an open mind to what the resolution might look like, because a standoff for another 10 years is not an answer. That just means everybody keeps getting poisoned.
Right.
So I'm proud of the work that Sierra Club has done and that allies have done to make it impossible for them to move forward with the same old, or with the worst version, an expansion with more traffic and more pollution. But a lot of conversation is needed with people that I haven't been able to talk to because I'm not a legislator right now, and there are legislators on the Project Advisory Committee, and I'm going to want to sit down with them and say, we have some leverage. What are we going to get?
So I apologize to the other candidates who've been on the podcast because I didn't ask them this question that I'm about to ask. The sports gambling apps. I do not understand why legalizing sports gambling apps is on the table, like FanDuel and DraftKings, these things that are so highly addictive. I just watched a public hearing, like an informational hearing at the Senate, where they went through all of the harms, like the 27% increase in bankruptcies in states where this is legalized, the increase in domestic violence issues, just like financial ruin, social harms. I guess people are just hungry for the tax revenue. I don't understand why we would do this. So what is your position?
Boy, I'm really glad you asked me that question, because it just so happened I had a conversation with a constituent who was worried about this issue. And as a matter of fact, she used to work at Hazelden. And she saw on a personal level exactly what you're talking about, those disastrous effects. And in fairness to the other side, which I'm skeptical of, they say, well, people are going to do it anyway. It's better for it to be regulated. Almost like they're talking about like legalizing cannabis. And I don't think that's a good analogy. Cannabis is not, there's no algorithm in a joint. There's no algorithm designed to make something psychologically addictive. So I am absolutely worried that getting more revenue into the state without having to do the tough thing of like taxing the wealthy or whatever is the motivation behind this. And I'll just give you one more layer of my skepticism about this, which is I think one of the bills they offered last year would have even legalized this for betting on the collegiate level. This district, Kerry Diedzik's district, the district I want to represent, includes the University of Minnesota. Oh my God, do we want to add another layer? I mean, think about how exploited student athletes are already. Do we really want to add another layer of potential exploitation and stress on their lives? I mean, you're asking for trouble if people are allowed to bet on college games. I mean, the opportunities for corruption and ruining people's lives, not just the people betting, but the people whose actions on the field are going to have huge financial impacts. I come into this super skeptical, and I really hate the idea that we say, oh, the state needs more revenue, so we're willing to hurt people.
Right.
That's not where I come from.
Like, I understand the prohibition argument. Oh, people are going to do it anyway, whether it's legal or not. But right now, on my phone, I can't open DraftKings. I can't use FanDuel to bet on sports. I can't do it. And those are the big ones. And yeah. So maybe I could find some illegal website where it's possible, but it's just doubtless that it's going to be a lot more common and it's going to hurt so many more people if we do it. We're not even able to address the gambling addiction that we already have. So like the cost to the state in trying to address this, these companies are not going to give enough money to anti-gambling or addiction support groups that is going to be enough to address the harms they're going to cause.
There are a lot of these things where people are like, ooh, let's count the money that the state could get. And you need to count both the money the state would lose in the ruined lives and the ruined lives themselves.
Right.
That's where I come from. So I'm going to be a hard sell. And the collegiate thing is nuts.
Yeah.
To me.
Here we are at the end. Do you have any recommendations? This is the fun question. Tell us what you're enjoying in your life besides running a 1-week campaign for the legislature.
Well, the last time you asked me that question, I said we were watching Girls 5 Eva.
Yes.
And then we promptly stopped watching it because we just moved on to something else. I remember what it is. My wife loves The Bear. My wife loves The Bear. The Chicago Chef thing.
Yeah.
You know,
I've heard of it. I don't watch it.
Okay.
It seems like you only watch TV that your wife chooses for you. That's how you live your life.
That is kind of the thing. Okay, but I will add one genuine... I will not cheat by looking at my wife's answer. I will give you one thing.
Okay.
I have recently discovered that I am at the age now, and this is a beautiful thing about having kids of a certain age, which is that I now get to show them things that I really loved when I was their age, and we get to enjoy them again together. So I was eating in the kitchen, and I'm often eating out of sync with other members of the family. Not often, sometimes. And I was watching a black and white movie, and my daughter walked in and said, "What's that?" And we've watched 4 black and white movies: Blithe Spirit, The Lady Eve with Henry Fonda and Barbara Stanwyck, and 2 Hitchcock movies, including The 39 Steps. I know this won't last, John, but she loves it. Now, you got to be prepared. You got to be prepared to have conversations, because there are, these movies are dated, and they have gender and racial outdated thinking and a ton of smoking. And you got to point out that I tell my daughter the cigarette companies were actually paying the studios to get the stars to smoke because they wanted to blah, 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 blah. But if you're willing to go through that work and you love old movies, which I do, it is so awesome that she will watch Hitchcock's The 39 Steps with me and Young and Innocent, a lesser-known Hitchcock film. It's super fun. And I love the fact that she's old enough, just the older one, that we can do that together. It's pretty cool.
Did you say you're 54, 55?
54.
You're not even from the era of black and white movies. You're too young to have...
Oh, absolutely. I hope I didn't give you the impression that I was. I'm just a nerd. Okay. I'm not. I didn't watch The 39 Steps.
You saw it in theaters.
I didn't watch it in the theater. They used to have the Oak Street Cinema, and that was where I watched a lot of these movies. The old campus theater on Oak Street. They had a classic film house there. That was actually one of my jobs. Is I tried to negotiate when I was working for the mayor. I tried to negotiate a dispute between the management and the workers there to keep the theater open. In part because I was going there to see all those great old movies, but it didn't end up closing. There's housing there.
I lied. I have one more question. I'm going to kick myself if I don't ask this question. So Taylor of Twitter fame, and she's also on Blue Sky, was talking about how people are explaining all the money that is flooding into one of your opponents, from some questionable characters, I won't say who they are, but it's anti-Wagenius money. That's what it is. They hate Peter Wagenius. And I'm like, if these people hate Peter Wagenius, that says some nice things about Peter Wagenius.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I've been working on my campaign hard. I don't know what you're referring to in terms of Taylor's post.
It's like Nancy Hilden. I think there was a healthcare executive on the list of people, people you would not expect to donate to a progressive or donating to one of your also progressive opponents.
Okay. See, when you said that, I thought, is the ethanol lobby weighing into this race? Because I shouldn't be saying this, but they could get a lot of money from the ethanol lobby. Because I'm part of the biofuel skeptics group that is pretty adamant that we do not have time for false climate solutions. So that's, when you said that was the first thing that came to mind, is that there are some polluters who really don't want me to be a senator. So if you see money of theirs pop up, by all means, blow a really loud siren, because anybody who takes money from them is on the hook for Well, they're on the hook. I'll say that. I have not seen that. I'm not accusing anybody of that. I'm just saying we talked about like who's gonna not want me in the Senate. Well, that would be the top of the list. I'm sure there are others.
You've made a lot of good enemies over your long career, Peter.
That's okay. What was FDR's line? And I welcome their enmity.
I welcome their hatred. I think maybe it was.
Did he use the word hatred?
I thought he did.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
Thank you, Peter Wagenius, running for Senate District 60. The primary is Tuesday, January 14th. Just a couple of days left to vote there, so get out and vote. This has been the Wedge Live podcast. I'm your host, John Edwards. Thank you for listening.
This is a real thing. Real thing.
None of you have the balls to stop this. Stop this.
I've got plenty of time. I have nothing else going on today.
We're in the Wedge neighborhood right now.